Well, hello everybody, and happy Friday. Here we are again for another live stream. Angela beaming in from Boise, Idaho. How you doing, Angela?
I'm doing all right.
You've got
So still pretty smoky here.
that's
So
right.
if my voice sounds more raspy, sorry about that. I was in a Zoom meeting last night with someone from the Toronto area, and they're like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "Yes, it's just how we sound this time of year because of all the smoke and
Oh
fires and stuff."
God.
So, yeah. Yeah, but got the air purifier on and doing the best we can. So, welcome everyone.
Yeah, we got 10 people in the room already, and some of our regulars, Anchor there, who is already depressed by the by the imagery I chose. I spent so
Yeah.
much time coming up with those images too.
Yeah, to me it
Actually,
looked
Anchor.
more like somebody in like a praise service or
I
something
know.
reaching their hand up too. I'm like,
Exactly. Exactly. I was kind of
yeah,
worried about the hand. The hand image almost didn't go up because I thought it was kind of like religious like. I mean, he's reaching out for
yeah,
God or whatever, you know.
yeah. So who
Then we
knows?
got the
Yeah,
standard
it
mountain
works.
climbers. The mountain climbers are
Right.
always there for help, the helping hand. And then
Yeah,
the catching the tears, you know, I don't know.
yeah,
So
yeah.
helping, how to help people. But
Right.
you know, so what we thought we'd talk about today basically it's really again once again taken from a reading from Beyond Belief Agnostic Musings for 12-Step Life, and it's from the August 20th reading, which happens to be coincide with what today is, but it's all about kind of helping others and you know what's the best kind of way to do that or whatever. It just might make a good conversation that if you all would like to participate in that, you can do so in our live chat or by calling us in our toll-free line. But it's all about how to help others. So let's get into it, shall we, Angela? Just dive right in there.
Sure. Sounds
Okay.
good.
Because otherwise I don't really have any announcements to make or anything, other than to say that the podcast has been keeping me pretty hopping. Although I took a week off, it was a week I needed off, and now I got episodes to post. But other than that, no announcements. But here we go. This is from the August 20th reading of Beyond Belief Agnostic Musings for 12-Step Life. August 20th. Asking the right questions takes as much skill as giving the right answers. That is Robert Half, born in 1918. Even before our personal recovery is assured, we find ourselves being asked for help or advice from those who are even greener than we are. Oh, my dog, I want to say what she needs. I want to say what she needs to hear, but I just don't know what to say. The truth is that people need to feel heard more than they need to be told. Some of us wag fingers and tell the new person how it is and what to do. Some of us liken having a domineering sponsor to being loved. They care about me enough to tell me off. This type of dynamic doesn't work forever. Newcomers mature quickly, and as they outgrow this dominant submissive role play, I like that, it will put strain on the relationship, if not an end to it. Self evaluation won't uncover all the answers until we uncover the right questions. We are looking in 360 degrees for answers. Helping others can be more about listening than knowing what to say. How does that make you feel? And what else do you think this could mean? Are good questions to ask. Firstly, we don't know the answers. They do. They do. Secondly, what is true for us might not be true for someone else. Thirdly, nobody likes to be controlled. Well, not all the time, that is. The big book is still quite theatrical, but it went through a rigorous toning down. Professionals were asked to review the first draft of Alcoholics Anonymous and encourage the fellowship to take out many of the you must statements and replace these with suggestions and our experience. It is helpful to frame what we hear as experience rather than expertise. When tempted to say, face it, your life is unmanageable, can I try, how are you managing? Instead of saying, turn it over, can I say, I was a control freak and it didn't help me much. How about you? Questions help me help others find their own answers. Well, isn't that interesting? Helping people by
Yeah.
just asking a question.
Yes. I like it.
I do too.
Um, one of the, it reminds me of when I got into recovery, and yeah, the different types of sponsorship that you see, or at least I saw in the rooms, and I saw quite a few people that had the drill sergeant type
Oh yeah.
sponsor that was, you have to call me every day, and you have to underline and highlight all these words in the book, and you have to go to this study group with my other sponsees, and there was a lot of you have tos rather than suggestions.
Mm-hmm.
And that wouldn't have worked well for me, because I wasn't somebody that needed, to have my self-esteem leveled or whatever, my
Right.
ego leveled. So anybody like that, they couldn't keep up with how I do that to myself anyway,
Yeah.
So I needed somebody who was very caring, that didn't do that stuff, that kind of left it up to me. And I know with some people, they say, well, if it was left up to me, I wouldn't have done anything. And I suppose that that's true. But when people framed things in suggestions, I'm more likely to consider what their suggestion is, rather than telling me what to do. We've been over this before on this podcast. I
Mm-hmm.
don't even like announcers at stores telling me to have a good day. It's like, don't tell me what kind of day to have. And so, yeah, so that wouldn't have worked well for me. So I found somebody who was much more of a suggestions, and this is what's worked for me type of a thing. My first meeting, I did, get a couple of numbers, and I did call a lady, and then, she asked me how my day was, and I'd say crap, and she'd say, great, call me again tomorrow, go to a meeting and stuff. And she was my temporary sponsor. And so she told me, part of that was just to help me get in the mode of calling people every day, so that, if something happened major, I'd already be in that habit. So it wouldn't be like, oh, I don't want to call, I don't want to disturb this person, or, things like that. And also, as I was thinking about this today, it helps, at least it helped me be able to break down all of my daily, tragedies, or dramas, or whatever, in early recovery, into smaller pieces. So like if I was going to work, and somebody cut me off in traffic, and I am like, wait, I'm zen now, that's fine, they can cut me off, no big deal. And then I get to work, and a coworker is short with me, then I'm a little more irritated. And so by the end of the day, I go to call my sponsor, or possibly another person in recovery, if that's what the directions were, and they ask how I am, and I say fine, and they say, are you sure? Then I unload all these little things that happened during the day that wouldn't normally be a big deal, but the more I keep that kind of stuff to myself, the bigger deal it can create. And so then I can get to a place where, my ass is falling off, as they like to say around here. But because, I was telling somebody every day kind of how my day was, good or bad, I didn't really have as many of those like huge things, because I was used to telling somebody how my day was. So I was used to being honest with another person about, the basic stuff of my day, and those basic stuff of my days were things that I would normally use as excuses to go get a drink after work, because I had to put up with this and this, which is life. But at the time I would use those as reasons. So yeah, that's one of the things that made me think of, as far as more of the controlling or drill sergeant type of person. And yeah, and I do know people who said, I really needed that. I needed somebody to
Mhm.
tell me what
Mhm.
to do, when to do it, where to be at what time, and
Yeah.
all of that. And I think it's, an individual thing, but yeah, that was not gonna work for me. And so
Yeah.
I, moved over to somebody who was Buddhist, and so yeah, she was, these are kind of how I do it, and if you're interested in trying it this way, then let's do that, and so it went pretty well for me along that, and her thing was a lot of asking questions, and the way that I went through the steps, is more along the book of the alternative
Mhm.
steps, a secular guide.
Mhm.
But there were other things in there, that we ask questions and do, like a little essay, one paragraph thing on, and it's just to get you to thinking, really about, what role does alcohol play in my life, and when did that start? Has it evolved? That kind of a thing. So questions are kind of huge for that. The other thing I like about this is talking um, about most people wanting to just be listened to, and I think that's generally true, and it's also very helpful in relationship, both friendship and in partner relationships. When usually it's reserved or assigned to genders. That when somebody wants to a wife comes home and is complaining about work, and the guy's trying to problem solve for her when she just wants to be listened to, that kind of a thing. So this is where questions are good as well, like, okay, you've had a rough day at work, are you wanting a listening ear, or are we problem solving? And that's all you really need to ask. And usually, they'll be like, oh yeah, I just want to, vent. And then that solves a lot of problems
Mhm.
right there, because you've just asked a question like, are we doing this or this, just so I'm clear. And then yeah, and that oftentimes people just want to be heard, so that they can let go of whatever energy's been created from their frustration and anger for the day, or whatever it is. And then there are times when I do need someone to help me problem solve something,
Mhm.
like how to fix something that's gone wrong on my car, or how to place a pole to help a fence stand up, and that's falling down, things like
Yeah.
that. So yeah, asking questions, yeah, I think helps relationships,
Yeah.
particularly like that. So
I can relate to your needing the sponsor that had a more of a gentle approach. I was the same, although I didn't get that. In my experience, what happened with me, Angela, is early on I had the right sponsor.
hmm
The guy was he was the first person I ever met in AA. The first person literally who shook my hand when I walked in the door, and he was an older guy and was just so good. He just told me, you just don't drink and go to meetings. And he was just so nice and so pleasant. And he never asked me to read anything or do anything. He was just a supportive, kind person. And what happened is as I was going to meetings, like he was saying, and I was listening to all these other people with this mythical or not drill sergeant type sponsors, and having to read and underline and write and do all the stuff. And I thought that maybe I needed that, so I gravitated to one of those types of sponsors that told me that I needed to do this and that, and criticize me for not doing something or whatever. And it was just not what I needed, because now looking back on it, I see that that was the type of relationship I had with my father anyway. I mean, I grew up in a military family. My dad was
mm,
an army officer. He gave orders and I obeyed them. And if I didn't, there were consequences. So it was, not quite exactly like that, but that was kind of the pattern I was falling into. And again, not to cast too harsh of a light on it, because it was keeping me sober.
Hmm.
And there were other things going on in the periphery outside of that relationship that was probably really helping me keep it all together. That was namely the friendships. But all in all, looking back on it, though, I won't ever say it's bad to read a book, but you don't necessarily have to read the same book over and over for 20 freaking years.
Yeah.
And once read a couple of times, I think you've pretty much got it. But yeah, I now, if I could do anything different, it would be to not focus so much on thinking that I needed to do something, like that,
Hmm.
or study, or understand, and just kind of go with the process. But that's kind of ultimately what I did. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's my story. So that's
Yeah.
kind of what happened with me. But now, if I'm ever, I don't really sponsor people, but if I'm ever, working with someone or helping somebody, I guess my approach is just to try to be supportive of what they want to do,
Hmm.
and listen, and listen. I think that's really what people want more than anything else. So
Yeah. Well, and by listening, then you can offer, support or
yeah.
suggestions, but just, telling people what to do, or the good old take the cotton out of your ears and put it in your mouth or whatever. I
Yeah.
never understood that.
No, yeah. It's
It's
ridiculous.
like, who does that?
No.
Where did that come from?
Yeah.
And also just because it is the whole hierarchy and
Yeah.
stupid stuff.
Yeah.
So, but let's see. Bobbert here says the past few months I've been using
Yeah, that's
Reddit.
cool.
There are a few AA/sober subs where new/potential recovering people ask questions, so it makes it
Yeah,
easy to make suggestions
that's
or
neat.
help.
That's neat.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's great.
I've never really gotten into Reddit too much. I still do have a Reddit account for was AA Beyond Belief, but I
Mhm.
wasn't using it right. Reddit really is a community, and you really need to
Yeah,
invest a lot of time and doing, interaction with people and so forth. What I was
right.
doing is treating it kind of like Facebook or Twitter, where you just throw a post out there, and
Ah,
yeah, and Reddit actually told me, said, nope, that's not what we do here.
yeah.
Please actually talk with people.
Right, right. Yeah,
So
no,
yeah.
there's quite a few, really good Reddits out
Uh-huh.
there.
There
It's
are.
not something I'm super active in, but it
Yeah.
is something that I go to sometimes when I have questions
Mhm.
about communities,
Yeah.
because there are, good answers,
It's a great
and
resource.
people can, up the answer and stuff.
Yeah.
So,
A lot of
yeah,
times I'll
you
be
can.
searching for something, just Google search, and it'll take me to a Reddit post, you know? So there's a lot of
Mhm.
good information in there. That's cool that you're doing that, Bobbert. That's a good service.
Yeah, I find that in our group too, our Thursday Zoom meeting, that we get quite a few new people and new into recovery. And we have somebody in there now who's just, got like 20 something days and has never been to any sort of AA meeting other than ours. That he sees a therapist, and they
Mhm.
suggested looking for one, and ours came up. So even though
Hmm.
he's not in the area, um, but yeah, he brought the topic for yesterday, and it was just basically he had some questions, and they were, the kind of newer questions that people ask, like, okay, so I'm not drinking, but how do I talk to family members who are really big drinkers, because yeah, that is a scary thing if that's what your family does together, and you don't feel like you can, just cut off your family. How do you handle that situation? Or acquaintances who invite you to go do something, and so it was cool that we got to actually give some answers on how we've done that, and what worked for us, best practices
Mhm.
on that sort of thing. Because yeah, sometimes the meetings can be a little, philosophical on, you know,
Mhm.
on what life is, or, the one day at a time, or something. But this was, some real practical things that worked for people, and how they go about their sobriety. And so he had, a bunch of different responses that he could, consider and see what ones might work best in his situation.
Yeah.
So,
Christina has an interesting question. She says
yeah.
that she was just in a big book meeting and she's wondering if living sober might be more helpful. She hasn't read it yet, but the title's been popping up a lot on her radar lately. It doesn't hurt to read it, I suppose. There's a lot of other books out there, but yeah, the big book meeting probably wouldn't be my cup of tea right now and at this time of my life.
Yeah.
For some people, I guess it's okay, but yeah, if it's something you don't like, and it's not helpful to you, I don't think that I would mess with it. Yeah, Living Sober was written in the 1970s as opposed to the big book, which was written in the 30s or late 30s.
Yeah.
So a little bit of
Right.
a difference, but still not that modern, really.
Yeah. Yeah. I think even the book, The Alternative 12 Steps, a Secular Guide,
Hmm.
is more modern than Living
Yeah,
Sober.
yeah, that's right. It was written in
And
the
so
90s,
that's,
wasn't it?
yeah, that's one that if you're just looking to understand 12-step culture, and a more secular way
Hmm.
of looking at the culture and the 12 steps, but that still seems to be in adherence to most of the way meetings talk about them. I think that that's a good book for that. I think that the Getting Sober Without God is a really good book for just talking about sober life and how to use some of the tools that we talk about in recovery on your own. I believe he suggests, working with somebody else on different steps, or, as you're going through, there's certain ones that it's helpful to work with somebody else, but that could be a counselor as well. So yeah, so I'm really not big on, I don't recommend people read the big book or Living Sober, unless that's something that in their recovery community would be helpful to them for fitting in.
Yeah.
And if they don't have a whole lot of choices of recovery community, then I'd read those just so that you're familiar with what they're talking about in the
Hmm.
meetings. But otherwise, I wouldn't read them.
Yeah.
Out of the two of them, then I think Living Sober is probably more helpful because it's not preachy. If I
Yeah.
recall right, it is trying to get more to the friendly sober buddy kind of
What's so
thing.
funny is I'm still afraid to say, nah, I wouldn't mess with it. But I agree with you. You
Yeah.
have the courage to say it. Nah, I wouldn't recommend reading it.
Yeah, no,
I
my
mean, it's
my
so,
sponsor
no, yeah,
didn't recommend,
really?
it didn't tell me to read the big book at all. No.
Oh, wow.
So I read it just because I'm, adversarial, and I wanted to be able to fight with people about it.
Oh my
So
gosh, that's
yeah, so
right.
that's the only reason why I read it. But no, my sponsor didn't suggest it at all.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, or any other AA related literature.
Yeah.
So anything that I read, it's just been out of curiosity of my own, or I heard somebody talking about it and wanted to see if that's it. So yeah, I've never actually seriously gone through the 12 and 12. I've read, skimmed all of it so that I kind of know what's going on and stuff. But yeah, it's never been something that I was ever told to read and take very seriously, and so I haven't,
Yeah.
because what I did read was mostly preachy and much more religious than even the big book. So I was like, yeah, I don't see how this is helpful. So yeah, so I think that there's so many newer books that
Yeah.
are helpful. There's also like I can't remember the name of the person, but A Woman's Guide to the 12 Steps, and and that one's good as well. It does tend to be a little more within mainstream thinking on 12 steps. But it might be just what you need for the recovery that you're in. Again, it depends on the community that you have around you, and I really think that a lot of this is about community and about support. And so it doesn't necessarily need to be a 12-step community, but that does seem to be what is most easily available to the majority of people who are trying to make a change in their life.
Yeah. I was just kind of thinking out loud, not thinking out loud, but just thinking as you were talking, I was thinking, and I thought, I wonder, wouldn't it just be nice if we just didn't even have any official books at all, and we could just kind of talk about whatever books we want to read,
Yeah, well, and that's the thing, is that I don't think it's like supposed to be, official anymore. I mean,
No,
it's conference approved, but
right. It's not like you're right.
again,
You
you're
can read
not.
whatever.
Yeah, you don't have to just read conference approved literature. You
Yeah.
don't have to only have at your meetings conference approved literature. There's like a really big confusion about that still. Even though I believe they've tried to put out, newsletters and flyers and stuff correcting that idea that it's all about, conference approved
Yeah.
literature.
Yeah.
So,
but back to helping people and so forth.
yeah.
The whole idea that we were talking about is what I find interesting is this dynamic is the person like me who was new, and they're really kind of almost wanting some sort of specific instruction to follow
Hmm.
sometimes, and that sometimes isn't really best for the person, even they might think that that's what they want, and it's really difficult for someone who is looking for that to trust that, oh, okay, I don't have to follow a strict regimen or anything here. And things don't have to go linear for me. It's just a little different. I know. I don't know, but like I say, it's when I talk about my recovery, my experience, it's I have to look at myself as almost different people at different times of my life, and maybe at
Hmm.
one time in my life something worked, and now it wouldn't. So who am I to say that you know what I was what I was doing at that time was necessarily bad for me, but because it seemed to keep me sober. But from my
Right.
perspective now, it just seems kind of weird. I wouldn't want to be doing that now. And I'm meeting
Yeah.
people that are now the age I was then, who certainly don't want that. And
Right.
so that's
Yeah,
kind of
yeah, I do
interesting.
think like age and experience, all of that plays into what's helpful for you and what's not as well.
Yeah, yeah,
So yeah, so for certain people, Joe Bob, the information might be helpful, but
yeah,
for quite a few of the younger people that have been joining, our Zoom meeting lately, it isn't helpful. All they see is the language and the sexist language, and they're like, I can't relate to this at all.
mm,
So I'm glad that there's a lot of different um, stuff out there now, so
yeah,
that they can find stuff that they can relate to better. And the whole language regarding recovery has changed.
yeah,
And so so most of them don't don't call themselves an alcoholic, even if
yeah,
alcohol was their main drug of choice, because they call it alcohol use
right,
disorder, or yeah, and so having them have to say, I'm an alcoholic is also, something that I don't think is helpful for them
no,
anymore.
no,
So, when I introduce myself, depending on where it's at, like in my own home group, I say that I'm Angela, and I can't drink alcohol in a safe way.
mm,
Or now if I'm in another setting or a more traditional meeting or something, I'll say that I'm in long-term recovery.
yeah,
And so yeah, and that works for me, and it seems to be more helpful to these younger people because they can't relate, a lot of them, to the idea of an alcoholic, and they've sought out treatment and had medical doctors and health professionals explain what's going on to them in a way that doesn't use the term alcoholism anymore. And so I think that it's helpful for us to think about that and be willing to adjust, in our own meetings, if we want the fellowship to continue on. And maybe it's not supposed to continue on, and that'll be part of the evolution.
Right.
I think that the working with each other in ways where we're helping each other through addictions or recovery in some way will continue because it's effective. One person talking to another that has the shared experience, but I don't know in what way that'll continue to happen. So we'll see. But my experience, particularly during the last 2 years, has been that it's been more effective. I've drawn more people in to meetings, both secular and traditional meeting, the women's meeting that I was going to, by introducing myself in a way different than saying I'm alcoholic, and that those people have stuck around because they, saw somebody else that seemed a little bit more like how they felt about what was going on with them. So.
Anchor, we AA does make money off of the publications. That's how, for a long time, the AA World Services was really being funded, is through sales of the big book. I mean, they sell them like crazy in treatment centers and so forth. So they definitely did make money off of those. But I was always my contention that they could make even more money if they would come out with something new and improved. But who am I to say?
No, I'm really good with saying that these are historical documents. And having the Book of Alcoholics Anonymous be a historical book, and I would refer to it more and probably have it as more a part of recovery if it were thought of that way. But I've just never been one to use it as a holy text, and that's how it often gets referred to in the places where I attend meetings. Now, I know that there are different places where it's not. There are meetings that have been going for a long time where they don't have one, that they just go and they talk about, how their week went and, how they're going through life, being sober, and they celebrate each other's, recovery milestones with a cake, and that's what AA is to them. But for a lot of people, it's become more of a, this is a sacred text that was, divinely inspired by these, two guys. And that's just never been part of how I thought about things. So
I was going to ask you, so part of this helping people is how groups could best help people. And there was a conversation in the Facebook group about crosstalk. And do you think that crosstalk, first of all, how would you define crosstalk? And is it harmful or helpful or both? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So my understanding of crosstalk in the 12-step community is that it is when somebody shares something and then another person gives them advice on it. It can also sometimes be, somebody making a little joke as the person's talking or something like that, But I think the majority of the time it's talking about, say I was sharing that I was, ticked off at my dog for being aggressive towards, somebody yesterday, and that, that got me down and frustrated, and so I had to do some journaling on it, or something like that, and then and then the person who shared next gave me said, yeah, here's a number for the person I use for my dog, and it's probably
Mm-hmm.
because you're not being strong and dominant with your dog, so it thinks it can get away with things. And so that's how I understand
Right.
crosstalk is basically you're talking directly to
To
the
the person,
person
not from your
who,
own experience,
not from
really.
your own experience, not saying that, yeah, I've had a hard time with dogs in the past, and I've found that I've had to reach out to professional trainers, and that was helpful for me. And also trying to understand why I was so attached to the way that my dog was behaving, or why I thought my friend would hate me because of the way my new dog was behaving, or things like that. So yeah, so just getting it back to your experience on the issue, and not saying, hey, this is what you need to do, or this is why you're having that problem, or whatever. So that's my understanding of crosstalk, and
Yeah.
I see how it's helpful in treatment facilities or court programs, or things like that. It's a different environment
Right.
there, and I see that it could be beneficial in those specific environments. But that's because they do more of an educational thing.
Where it's
Their
kind of guided, kind of like
orientation,
a guided conversation.
yeah,
Yeah.
their orientation is different. They have a professional usually who's guiding the
Mm-hmm.
conversation, who can um, redirect if
Yeah.
somebody is too personal
Right.
or is inappropriate or whatever. So I think in those settings that it seems to work out okay for some people. Because we have had one person who's like, I appreciate my VA group more because we call each other on our stuff,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and that's what he felt that he needed.
Yeah.
But that's not how we do it
Yeah.
in 12-step meetings. And I like how we do it in 12-step meetings, because it's really hard to argue with somebody about their own personal experience.
Yeah.
And I think that sometimes happens in other types of meetings, and nothing really gets people more upset than when you try to tell them that something that they believe or experienced is not true. So just going with that this is my experience, and if it's helpful, then cool, and if it's not, then that's okay too. This is what I have to offer.
Yeah.
And then that way, yeah, it also takes any sort of pressure of trying to save somebody, like this
Mm-hmm.
talked about at the beginning, like, oh, I really wish I could say something that's really going to make a difference,
Mm-hmm.
out of the equation, because it's
Yep.
like, I'm going to say what my experience is, and if it makes a difference, great, and if it doesn't, then that's okay too, because it's what I have to offer. you
Yeah.
know so it helps keeping within with honesty as well.
Yeah. I do think there's sometimes a kind of a subtle form of crosstalk where
Hmm.
a person will kind of, well, it's happened to me where
Hmm.
I've been corrected through someone else's experience, which is completely contradictory to my own, So it's like,
Mm.
I might share something and then the next person will like, I'll say like, for me, the group is what helps me stay sober. I don't really
Hmm.
need a god or a higher power.
Hmm.
And then someone else will right after that will say, the time and place will come, it says. you
Yeah,
know
where the group will let you down, and any
exactly.
individual person,
So they're
or
not like exactly going directly at me, but they're kind of doing it in kind of a passive aggressive way, I guess.
hmm.
I've had that happen before, where like everybody, and maybe it was my imagination, maybe people are just doing what they need to do, but
Hmm.
I was like, I felt like people were just kind of correcting me and kind of setting me like, no, that's what it says here. You gotta,
Right.
whatever. But yeah, for the most part, yeah, I think that crosstalk is just, where you're trying to give advice to someone during the meeting, and it's kind of, it's not good. I don't like it
Right.
because we're not
Yeah.
professionals. We're not there to treat. We're there
Yeah.
we're there to support one another is what we're there for.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I like what Christina says. I can't stand when people are like, but what's your name? If somebody
Oh
forgets to
yeah,
introduce themselves and goes right into their share.
I
Yeah.
know.
That's one of the things that I love about the Zoom meeting, is
You
that,
don't.
yeah, that we don't do that.
For the
And
most part too, at the secular meetings I was going to, I don't normally will see that happen if someone doesn't say that, but you're at traditional meetings usually, yes, I would always hear that, and I hate that too.
yeah.
Yeah, it's like, no, just let the person say what. I hope someone does that to me sometime.
You're getting all feisty.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll give them a piece of
That's
my mind
okay.
on
You'll
that.
probably calm down, because by the time we go to, in-person meetings again,
Yeah,
it'll be past. So,
yeah,
but yeah, I've heard that a ton too. And yeah, it's it's interesting, the different things that people latch on to in meetings that, that I think make them feel like they belong, or like they're
right,
part of something. And so I think that's what that comes from, is the, oh, this person has forgotten that this is what we do, and they
right,
don't realize that it's, a ritual type thing. It's not a
exactly,
requirement. you know
exactly.
Kind of like the people who don't understand that you don't have to end the meeting with the Lord's Prayer. You don't have to, hold hands or chant, or anything like that. Some of them, just think that that's what you have to do. And so when you bring it up that, oh, maybe, we could do this way, it freaks them out at first,
Mm-hmm.
just because it had never occurred to them that they didn't have to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of reminds me of people who, when they're asked how they did it, stayed sober, and they're like, well, I do the steps, and I help people, and I attend meetings, and I pray, and I have to do all of this because I don't know which one is the thing that's keeping me sober. And
Yeah.
and it's just like, I've just heard that so much. I'm like, okay, well, there's plenty of time for introspection, I guess. And yeah, but it's a lot of that's what they've heard, or the I didn't do it, God did it. And so, that's always an interesting one too, because it's like, well, didn't God, cause you to drink as well then?
Yeah.
And so why would God cause you to drink, and then cause so that you'd have to, go to AA to get sober?
You
Just
know,
a lot of interesting thinking.
and actually, a group would be wise, to really stop and think about the what is like inside jargon, what we'd
Mm-hmm.
say,
Yeah.
and ritual and stuff like that, and be cognizant that someone who's brand new to your meeting isn't familiar with all of our internal jargon and our
Right.
culture and all of that, and
Yeah.
it might be better to kind of drop all of that and just kind of get into the real world where that person is living, not the AA world, you know.
Right.
So I just kind of a thought. I've seen oh, some time ago, even in the grapevine they were recommending that maybe groups might be wise not to to consider not reading how it works, because that might
Mm-hmm.
be kind of off-putting to someone who has
Yeah.
never been exposed to that.
Right.
And that's a good point, and I think so. It's, I don't know, just it's someone who's kind of if you want to be more
Yeah.
inclusive, to kind of
Right.
drop some of
Yeah.
that
And
stuff.
if you poll, the AA membership, and ask them, how it worked for them, how they got sober, it would not read out like how it works.
Yeah.
There'd be a lot more about community, and there'd be, being of service, but it wouldn't go, the way that it's written, in the big book. There'd be aspects of it, but it would be different. And
Hmm.
so, yeah, walking into a room and hearing that, whenever I've been at one of those meetings, and there's been a new person there, I just feel, I feel embarrassed,
Yeah.
actually.
I do too.
I'm just like, oh yeah, this is probably not helpful. So, I would circle more. progressive meetings, even if they weren't secular, but just more meetings that are more open and have more progressive
So
thought
in
for
Boise,
them to attend.
at your group in Boise or at traditional meetings, do you guys do a first step meeting, quote, a first step meeting for people who are brand new to the room, brand new to the meeting? A first step meeting is where everybody goes around the room and they basically talk to that person and give their drunkalog to that person.
No, not
You
really.
don't do
If
that?
there's, yeah,
Okay.
if somebody, so usually it's, are there any new people here in their first 30 days,
Uh-huh.
or something like that. And then the person will announce themselves or not. And then, people who have been around a while, who are picking the topic for the night will adjust whatever the topic is
Based on that.
to be,
Yeah.
yeah, to be a
That's a good
little
way
bit
of doing
more
it.
geared towards newcomers. We do have newcomer meetings that are
Yeah.
listed in the schedule that are specifically for people who are new in recovery, and they mainly go over, like just the beginning of getting sober and the first 3 steps, kind of. And so
Okay.
everybody talks about their experience of getting sober, so the beginning part of that,
Well,
and not so much into the later steps and what they're what they've done since then,
yeah.
except that their life's better and blah blah blah.
Well, they
But
do
it's
something here in Kansas, Missouri area anyway that I'm familiar with that I don't like, and our group stopped doing it. But it's called you have a person who's brand new to the meeting, never seen them before,
mhm,
and you find out they're new to AA. So someone says, "Okay, let's have a first step meeting." And what that first step meeting is where everybody goes in a circle and they share their story with that person. So that person is now like the center of attention where everyone is
mhm,
talking to them, sharing their story, right?
mhm.
And it's just kind of weird. And the meeting, those meetings kind of get kind of long because some people don't know how to give the condensed version of their story, you
Right.
know?
Yeah.
So it's just kind of our group decided that, you know what, let's instead of doing a first step meeting, let's
Mhm.
just make that person feel comfortable and just have a regular meeting and just kind of bring them into the group that way. And I think it's worked a
Yeah.
lot better for us than having that focus on the person.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know?
No, like I said, we keep them in mind, and
Yes.
at least those who have been in recovery for a little while. And so, cater what we're saying to, how we felt, or, what it was like at first, regardless of what the topic is. We make sure to go back to when I first got here and I heard about, whatever this topic is, this is what I did or felt or, thought
Mhm.
about. And then this is how, I've changed, or, what happened for me, that kind of a thing. So that it is, still, because quite a few of us have talked about in my home group, coming in and going to a meeting that was like, we're talking about, step 9. It's like, oh
Mm.
yeah, that is way too much for a
Right.
person walking into their first meeting. We're going to talk about how
Yeah.
you,
Yeah. So you
fuck
kind
some
of
shit
shift.
up, and that you
Mhm.
have to go in and apologize, and and come clean for all the messed up stuff you did. So yeah, not super helpful. But yeah, so we don't direct it to them, because that, I think, would be uncomfortable as well. That if everybody was like, oh, you're new, we're gonna, everything is about you. And I don't like that saying that I hear a lot in meetings. When a newcomer's there, saying, that you're the most
Most
important
important
person in the
person.
room. It just feels weird and inauthentic.
Yeah.
It's like, yes, we want to help you. That's part of how this whole thing works. But, that just seems awkward.
Yeah.
And so I think some of that is not, paying attention or falling in line with culture as culture changes, so
And you
being
feel
of
bad when you're
service
no
is
longer the most important person in the room. You start feeling
right. Yeah. And it's like, oh, should I drink so that I'm still the most important person in the room? Yeah. So So what is that about?
Yeah.
But yeah, so no, we don't do stuff like that.
Well, I think it was wise that our groups dropped that, and that was really rare. Like as Bob had mentioned, I guess it's really it's that's what they do in Chicago too.
Oh, well, I
Um,
should be finding that out, probably, in the start of the new year, probably. One of my close friends here, somebody that, I care about deeply, is moving to Chicago.
oh, really?
And yeah, so I will be going to visit. And I've never been to Chicago other than the
Oh,
airport.
yeah.
And so, yeah, so I will check out some meetings when I'm there.
Well,
But
it's a great
yeah.
city. I haven't been to the city itself in a long time. I get whisked off to the suburbs when I go there because my employer, they're based in Chicago
Oh,
suburbs.
mhm.
Yeah, so I'm like you. I see the airport, and then they whisk me off into suburbia. But I'd love to go to the city sometime. You know,
Yeah.
it's a
Yeah.
beautiful
So
city.
yeah, and try out some meetings. So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, it'll be interesting.
They were
So
talking, Joe C made a comment about AA and therapy. He says it's
mhm,
semantics. He says it's
mhm.
semantics. AA is therapy and it's a group. There's no facilitator in AA, it's just peers. No one's getting paid. So it's not group therapy, no therapist. But so yeah, I see what he's saying. It's kind of like, what is therapy? You can give it a kind of a broad term, but it's not therapy in the sense that it's professional where you have like a, you know, you have a counselor that's there that's trying to provide therapy to somebody, but it's therapeutic in the
Yeah.
sense that
Yeah. I
it's
guess
helpful.
therapeutic would probably
Yeah,
be, the right word. Because,
yeah,
yeah, because, to me, therapy is generally a professional person who is guiding you through a, certified therapeutic process, that has been scientifically reviewed and, all of that. And that is, yeah, not really what we do.
yeah.
So,
Then Beardo watches movies says anytime we have a newcomer, we just make it a point to make sure they know that they can stick around after and meet folks. That's a good point.
mhm.
I hate meetings where they descend on newcomers like locusts. Me too.
Yeah.
That's give people space.
Right.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah. And one difficulty that we've had in the past when we were meeting in person too is that sometimes some of the old timers would get down on some of the people for not descending on newcomers like locusts. But we've talked about it, and what we found is like one, maybe two people walking up to the person and asking if they have a meeting schedule or have any questions seems to be okay,
mhm,
and much preferred to the descending like locusts.
yeah. And Joe says, and shaming people into accepting the 24-hour coin.
Mm,
This happens sometimes, even in my group, and I don't like this practice, but I don't think any harm is meant by it. But what happens is someone opens up the meeting by asking if there's anybody there for the first time since their last drink. Personally, I mean, I know the intent is to be helpful and so forth, or does it, but I just think, what, don't say that. Just let somebody, if they have a need to talk about coming back from a relapse, then let
hmm.
them bring it up naturally rather than having that uncomfortable period where you're looking around. "Hey, boy, is anybody here from there after the last drink?" I never did like
Yeah,
that. I think it's unintentionally, if it's
shaming.
shaming, it's unintentional, but nonetheless it's just uncomfortable for me personally to
Yeah.
when that is said. But
Yeah. And that's,
yeah,
one of the cool things that we've discovered, particularly during the pandemic, is that, you can start your own group
you
and,
can do whatever you
and
want.
put it together the way that you want. Some of us did that before as well. But, it's particularly easy to do now.
It is.
And,
It sure is.
yeah. And so you can be of service, like I said, my group has had their website since 2008 when we started. And so there's a lot of people that are looking for secular or atheist, agnostic AA meetings. And our group pops up first
Mm-hmm.
because we've had our website for
Yep.
so long. And so, so yeah, so they contact contact us, first to get to a meeting, and
Isn't that
we've
interesting?
decided
Before
that
they would even contact
yeah,
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
and particularly they're people under the age of 40, because that's how
Mhm,
they know to find information, is you go to the internet and
mhm.
you type in, the search engine,
Yeah,
exactly what you want, which is an atheist AA meeting,
yeah,
and so yeah, so we feel that it's part of our service, to keep our Thursday meeting particularly online, for as long as people want to attend that meeting, because we seem to be funneling, part of the funnel to get people through to help them find additional resources. So,
yeah. I get frequently, I'd say pretty frequently. I'm not. It's not like every day, but often, I get emails from people asking about secular Al-Anon meetings, if there are
mm,
any, and I refer them to the secular Al-Anon website that
hmm,
from the group in Boise that started up over there.
yeah, yeah.
And they've got some meetings listed there, but I get that question pretty frequently. Just today, I had someone asking about that. So,
Yeah, that's because yeah, the Al-Anon World Service is not pleasant at all about
mm, they
secular
aren't. They
things.
aren't.
They're really, really aggressively anti
Mhm.
secular
Isn't that
anything.
something? Yeah,
And
they
so
are.
yeah, so whereas at least with like GSO or AA World Services, if you contact the meeting people, they will direct you to some
Right.
of the secular websites that show secular meetings and stuff. So they just want to help people get sober. Apparently, Al-Anon does
Yeah,
not
that's funny. It's
want to
interesting.
help
Al-Anon
people.
is so
Yeah.
interesting. Al-Anon is like that, and so is OA.
Oh, right. Yeah.
They're not
Yeah.
at all supportive of the
It's
secular
so weird.
meeting. It
Yeah.
is. It really
Yeah.
is. Where AA
So
is really
strange.
pretty cool about it. Now I know that they had their times. I mean, there's been
Yeah.
certain, local groups that,
Yeah. It
yeah,
tends to be local or regional type
yeah,
things, but yeah.
yeah.
Anyway, it's interesting.
It is
So
interesting.
yeah, so helping others. That's what the reading was today on August 20th, and the main takeaway from it was that yeah, asking questions and just talking from your own experience if you're in a meeting is helpful. And not descending on people like locusts if it's an
Right.
in-person meeting, and oftentimes I would ask a couple questions just to see where they're at, if they're this is their first time ever attending an AA meeting, or if they've been before and didn't like other meetings, or if they're court ordered. I don't ask, are you court ordered? I just kind of
Mhm.
like, what brought you here today.
Mhm.
And then if they have just always hated AA, I'll suggest the Dharma recovery and the Smart recovery, and additional recovery resources, because it's possible that they wouldn't like a secular AA meeting as well. It could just be the format of 12-step meetings that they don't like,
Yeah.
and if that's the case, then I still want them to be able to get recovery in whatever form that looks like to them. So yeah, so we try to give them as many resources as possible, so that they have choices in that, and that seems to be the best way that I've found to help new people that show up.
Yeah. There was something I wanted to talk about, but I'm not going to be able to find it now, but maybe I'll post it later. But there's a conference that I'm going to be going to. It's an online conference for peer support. And
Mhm.
I think that they actually have it out in Vegas, but this is going to be totally virtual this time
Mhm.
around. And I'm looking forward to that. That's going to be coming up here really soon. I'm going to have to find my email. I must have accidentally deleted it. I have a problem. I get so many spam emails that I just kind of delete. Then I end up deleting the one that I need. But I'm
Yeah.
kind of excited about that. I haven't been participating as much as I would like to with the local community here of peer support specialists like I was earlier. I'd like to get back into that, and also the national organization for advocacy.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of looking forward to getting into that again. I always get so much hope from that, because
Hmm.
I'm meeting people from, all kinds of, all walks of life, and there's nothing in those meetings that cause me any concern or feel uncomfortable, like religious or anything like that. It's really people that are open-minded about, finding ways to help people, meeting them wherever they are. So
Yeah,
yeah. Yeah, I
very
wish I could go
cool.
to Vegas, Joe. I don't know if I'm going to be going anywhere now anymore. So that's kind of a bummer, but
Yeah.
things will get better one of these days. So
Yeah.
I guess that pretty
So,
much covers it. Thank you
yeah.
everybody for participating. And Peter, I'm sorry for trashing your book that you like so much, Living Sober. But that's cool. And
Yeah.
thank
No,
you.
and it's helpful to people. So, yeah, I have
Yeah,
recommended living sober, Peter.
yeah,
It's just, yeah, not one
and
that I find a lot for my
no,
personal sobriety. So,
and thank
well,
you,
thank you,
John.
everyone.
All right, I guess that's it. We're out of time. So y'all take care. We'll be back again next week for another live stream, and probably I'll be posting some more episodes this week as well. So look out for those over the coming week. And with that, I'll say goodbye, everyone. We'll talk to you next week. Bye.